You can have a 5 to 1 ROAS. You could be growing revenue 40% year over year, celebrating milestones, impressing investors, and still be on the path to failure. Do you know why? Because revenue is not profit. I believe that growth that burns through cash is a fast path to failure. I have spent a lot of time in the marketing world, and I have seen too many companies celebrate revenue growth while the business quietly bleeds cash. In this video, I'll break down the letter N in my signal framework. N stands for numbers. Does your unit economics actually work at scale? Because if they do not, nothing else matters. Here is what I see at businesses again and again. A company is growing, their revenue is up maybe 30 to 40%, sometimes even 50% year over year. The team is excited, the board is happy, and because of this, everyone is talking about scaling. They want to add more budget, bring more leads, get more sales. But if you look deeper, the economics are broken. They are losing money on every customer or barely breaking even. And the faster they grow, the faster they burn through cash. Most businesses do not realize the unit economics are broken until it's too late. They're tracking revenue, CAC by channel, and they're optimizing ROAS. But they're not tracking the numbers that actually determine if the business works. Revenue growth can hide a lot of problems until it cannot. Unit economics is simple. For every customer you acquire, do you make money or lose money? And all this should not be in theory or in future. It should be right now based on real costs and real revenue. Most marketers think about this in terms of ROAS or customer acquisition cost. Our ROAS is 4 to 1, so we are profitable. But ROAS does not account for cost of goods sold, fulfillment and shipping, customer service, returns or refunds, platform fees, and operational costs. The formula for ROAS is simple. It's revenue divided by ad spend. That is all. A few days ago, I talked about this in my video called Demand Creation versus Demand Capture. In that video, I talked about targeting the right people at the right stage of their journey. Intent matters. Getting the strategy right matters. But even if you nail that, even if you're targeting perfectly and converting well, if your unit economics do not work, you will still fail. You can have perfect intent alignment and still lose money on every customer. Revenue is not profit. And if your unit economics do not work, you do not have a real business yet. So what should you actually track? There are 3 numbers that determine if your unit economics work. Let me walk you through each one. Contribution margin. This is your profit per customer after all variable costs. The formula for contribution margin is this: revenue minus CAC minus COGS minus variable costs. Let's break that down with an example. Let's say you sell a product for $100 and your customer acquisition cost is $25. Your COGS, that is product cost, manufacturing, and packaging, adds up to $40. You spend another $10 on fulfillment and shipping, and you spend another $8 on payment processing, customer service, returns, which are your variable costs. So the total cost in this case is $83. What's your contribution margin? You subtract $83 from 100, which you get $17, and that's your actual profit per customer. If this number is positive, you're making money. But if this number is negative, you're losing money on every sale, no matter what your ROAS says. And here is what most businesses miss. Contribution margin can be positive on the first purchase, but negative when you account for returns, refunds, or higher than expected service costs. You need to track this based on actual data and not on estimates. Payback period. This tells you how long it takes to recover your customer acquisition cost. The formula for payback period is simple. You divide CAC by the monthly gross margin per customer. Why does this matter? Because it determines how fast you can scale. Let's say your CAC is $120. Your customers buy once per month on average, and your gross margin per order is around $40. So in this case, your payback period is 120 divided by 40, which equals to 3 months. That means in 3 months, you have recovered your acquisition cost. After that, everything is profit. If your payback period is 3 months, you can reinvest cash quickly and grow fast. But if your payback period is 18 months, you need massive capital to scale, or you will grow very slowly. Payback period is the growth speed governor. It is not sexy, but it's the difference between businesses that scale and businesses that have very slow growth. Here are some of the industry benchmarks for payback period. For e-commerce, it's between 2 to 4 months. And if you're in the e-commerce domain in the durable space, it's between 6 to 9 months. For B2B SaaS companies, this is between 5 to 12 months. If you're above these ranges, you either need to reduce your CAC, increase purchase frequency, or raise more capital. LTV to CAC ratio. This is the lifetime value divided by your customer acquisition cost. It tells you if over a customer's entire lifetime, how much profit do they generate compared to what you spend to acquire them. The formula for this is again very simple. It's customer lifetime value divided by the CAC. What does a healthy ratio look like? If you're below 1 to 1, you're losing money on every single customer, and the business model is broken. If this ratio is between 1 to 1 to 2 to 1, you're barely sustainable and there's very little room for error. If it's over 3 to 1 and less than 4 to 1, you are in the healthy zone, and this is the target for most businesses. If this ratio is over 5 to 1, this is an excellent range. You're either in a great market or potentially underinvesting in acquisition. Most companies I work with think their LTV to CAC is 5 to 1 or 6 to 1. Then we calculate it based on actual retention data and actual LTV, not based on projections. And it's 2 to 1 or even worse, because they inflate the lifetime value by assuming customers will stay forever, or they under-account the CAC by only looking at paid ads, ignoring content, tools, salaries, and agencies cost. The math feels good, but it's wrong. Let me tell you about a company I worked with a few years ago. This was a B2B SaaS company doing around $8 million in annual revenue. They were growing 35% year over year, Series B funded, and the board was excited. They brought me in because the CAC was rising and they wanted to optimize their channels. So I started digging into the numbers, and here is what I found. The average deal size was around $12,000 per year, and the CAC was $4,200. Now, on the surface, that looked fine. The ROAS was about 2 to 8 to 1. But when I calculated the contribution margin, the revenue per customer was $12,000, the CAC was $4,200, but the COGS, or the cost of goods sold, was $3,800, and the variable costs was another $4,000. So the total cost in this case was $12,000, but the contribution margin was 0. They were breaking even on every customer in year 1. But it gets worse. When we looked at retention, about 30% of the customers churned in the second year. So the actual lifetime value was much lower than projected. And when you factor in the cost to replace churned customers, they were losing money overall. Growing revenue was actually accelerating the path to failure. We paused growth. I know that sounds crazy. The revenue was growing, investors wanted to scale, but the economics did not work. So this is what we did. First, we increased the prices by 20%. But some customers churned, but the ARR stayed flat and the margin improved dramatically. Then we reduced the onboarding and support costs by building better self-service tools. And lastly, we focused retention efforts on the highest LTV segment, and we stopped trying to save every single customer. 6 months later, the contribution margin went from $0 to $4,800 per customer, and the payback period dropped from 18 months to 7 months, and the LTV to CAC ratio improved from 2.1 to 1 to 4.3 to 1. Then we scaled, and because the unit economics worked, growth was sustainable. So how do you know if your unit economics will work or is working? This is the audit I run. First, you calculate your contribution margin. Pull real data, not estimates. Revenue per customer. Is it positive? By how much? If it's negative, you need to either reduce the costs or increase the revenue per customer before you scale. Next, you calculate the payback period. How long does it take to recover your customer acquisition cost? Is it under 6 months? Then you can scale relatively fast. But if it's over 12 months, you need significant capital or you will grow slowly. Calculate your LTV to CAC ratio and use actual retention data. Do not use projections. How long do customers actually stay? What do they actually spend? Is it above 3 to 1? Then you are in good shape. But if you're below that ratio, you need to improve retention, increase your lifetime value, or reduce your CAC before you scale. Here's the question most businesses skip. Do these numbers improve or degrade as we scale? Sometimes contribution margin gets better at scale. Economies of scale, better pricing power, and so on. And sometimes it gets worse because the quality of customer declines, the support costs rise, or the competition in your market increases. Model it, do not assume. If you cannot answer these questions with confidence, you do not have a marketing problem, you're dealing with a numbers issue, and you need to fix that before you pour more money into growth. Here is what I want you to remember. Revenue growth is not the same as profitable growth. You can scale revenue and still destroy your business at the same time. Unit economics determine how fast you can grow, how much capital you need, and whether your business model actually works. Before you scale, you need to know your contribution margin per customer, the payback period, the LTV to CAC ratio, and you need to stress test those numbers at scale. Scale reveals problems, it does not fix them. If the economics do not work at 100 customers, they are not going to work at 10,000. Fix the numbers first, then scale. If you want to audit your own unit economics, I have built a calculator. It walks you through your contribution margin, payback period, and LTV to CAC ratio. And it has all the formula you need so you can plug your numbers into it. I call it the Unit Economics Calculator, and I'm going to drop the link in the description. Have a beautiful day.